and Mimi. This is the son, and of course everybody knows Gene.
Yep.
So we're so happy to be here to celebrate.
All right.
I think with that, I've asked Ed Schinkel to say a few words of innovation, and so Ed, if I can ask you to give us a little prayer, possibly, and good words, I hope.
Maybe a little bit more than a little prayer. Many of you knew Keith a lot better than I did. And so when Rick asked me on Sunday to say a few words about Keith, I was taken aback a little bit because of, like I say, many of you knew him better than I did. But I thought of back when I was first sort of into this, and I'd just gotten my new Rubicon, and we were out in the desert with several others, Keith and I, and we came up on this big hill. We were going to turn around at the bottom of the hill. Many people had been up that hill. It was very rocky, it was sort of washed out, and it was quite steep. And I was somewhat leery about whether or not I could actually make it, but I wanted to take the challenge. So I asked Jim Holmes if he might come with me for moral support. And so Keith and I both went to the top of that hill, and when I made it up to the top there, I felt a sense of accomplishment, and I think Keith did too. And I think of him today. I think that maybe Keith is climbing that hill and is with the Lord today, that he's climbed that hill. And only God and Keith know where he is today. But I'd like to think that he is with God today. There was just a couple weeks ago, I hadn't been out too much, and I went down to the Thursday group to go out with them, and Keith met me down there. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey, where you been? I've been missing you." And I thought to myself, how great is that when somebody comes up to you and says, "I miss you." And today, Keith, we miss you. We really miss you. I thought about that, and I thought, if last Thursday, if I would have come up to Keith and would have told him the next day, "You're going to be dead," I think he would have laughed at me. But Gene told me that Keith had just been to the doctor and he was in very good physical shape. And that just points out the simple fact to us that none of us know when we're going to be called to death. And we need to be ready. We need to be ready to meet the Lord. Now God has given us a free gift. That free gift is heaven. And I know there are some of you that may not believe in God or may not even believe in heaven and hell. But let me assure you, there is a heaven, there is a hell. It's so easy. God has given us this free gift. And with that free gift, we can receive it so easily just by acknowledging that Jesus Christ is our Savior. And also that we are sinners. And I don't think anyone here would have a problem realizing that they are a sinner. And also that we are willing to forgive each other and ask forgiveness of those that we have harmed. I brought along a few of these little New Testaments, and it describes exactly what I said, only in a lot more detail. And if anyone would like one, they're sure welcome to it. I can give it to them afterwards. But anyway, Jean did not go out with Keith. She said something to me to the fact that Keith scared the hell out of her. And that's not a bad thing, but she still didn't want to go out with him. So she would love to hear from you any of the adventures or misadventures that you had with Keith. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to say thanks to everybody. I was able to go on a couple runs with Al. The last one over Christmas. And it's a tribute to all you guys, how tight a bond you have. Getting out there in the desert was a lot of fun. He loved it. I know you all do. And I appreciate you all coming today and giving him a send-off.
Yeah, Gene, I probably was out more with Keith than anybody in the park. And he enjoyed his Jeep very much. One time we broke off from the rest of them. They were going a little too slow for Keith. So we were going across country. I think Fred remembers that. He kept following. One time we went up, going up a hill, a bank there, and the spare tire left the imprint on the sand. And he said, I think I'll back up a little bit. We went around about a half hour later, so we caught up with the rest of them.
I'd like to say something about it. I'm a much better driver because of Keith, because his famous saying to me was when he'd climb something, he'd come over to me and I'll phrase it a little different. And he'd say, you don't have a hair on your butt if you don't try that. I'd have to go try it. Sometimes I'd make it, but I'm a much better driver because of Keith.
I was a yellow Jeep driver. And a lot of you guys know how much Jimmy Holmes would give Keith and I hell, and Bill Lance, because we were so proud of our yellow Jeeps. Diane Jaycott was the first to tell me what the word Jeep really meant. Just empty every pocket. And if you look at the Bad Ruby over here, you can't remember what that definition is. On Les's vehicle, that's exactly what it says. And Les bought that Jeep up in Parker last fall when he and Keith, Jim went up there, and the rest of us went up. And you know, I guess over the years that I've known Keith, he's helped me spend a lot of money. He led by example. And you can see it out here, and I hope to goodness on behalf of the family that you get reasonable return on that. But Keith is, like Les said, he's taught us a lot of things. And he certainly left us too soon. When I would come back in the fall, he was one of the first people to say, welcome back. And you never knew what he had in store for you, but you knew it was going to be exciting. And I just think we've lost a great one, but I'll tell you, he's probably, bless him, he's probably on to greater things. And we'll all see him again sometime. Thank you. Well, I'm Rick Hogan. I live just over a block here, so I come by here probably once a day at least. I always have coffee with them. Usually they're just getting up. Keith is. Gene's been up a long time. Keith just wanders in, blurry-eyed, hair all messed up, and he never. You can't see through the windows, right? So how does he tell you to come in? Yeah. You know, and that means come on in. So I go in, have coffee with him. When I first bought my first Jeep, which is a Cherokee, we sat down there, and he looked at me in the eye, and he said, congratulations. He said, you know what Jeep stands for? And I said, no, I don't know. Just empty every pocket. And so I remember that, and he's right today.
Thanks.
This is not easy for me. I don't speak very well, but I had what could have been a tragic experience with Keith. I went out with Rex I've only been out with him, but I had a chance to ride with Keith. And he's very adventurous, so he'll go where nobody else will go. We took off down over this hill. Everybody's standing up here watching. Down over this hill, over these rocks all the time. And pretty soon, we came to the bottom of the hill, which went straight down. I don't know if you realize the gearing in that Jeep. You put on the brakes in low range, you can't stop it. You got to kick it into neutral to stop it. So we came this close to the edge, got turned around, came back up, got up on top of a rock. In fact, we were going like this. So he said, well, if you could just stand out on the running board. So I did. There's not a lot of room on that running board. He climbed up on this rock, and he's like this, and it's teetering. I didn't look down until I fell off. I was about 6 feet off the ground. Kaboom. He got out of there. But I actually cherish that moment. Really appreciate it.
We got pictures.
I still hurt.
Thanks, Dick.
I've been out with Keith quite a few years, and I've watched him go from advising me. I started out with the Rubicon, and I had 31-inch tires, and then he was up, and then he went 33s, and he was higher, and then I went to 35s, and 2 weeks ago he sat with me and said, Brad, I want to admire you. And I said, why? Because, you know, he goes every place, as you hear all the stories. He goes places that I don't have enough, whatever you want to call it. But I don't go there. I can't do that. But the thing that got to me was he started lecturing me. He said, you know, he said, you are smart. And I go, wait a minute. Keith goes every place, is admired by all because he has those big gonads, or lack of things up here. And then he lectures me, you better stay with 35s. If I had to do it over again, I would be 35. So you realize how much it's cost to put in Dana 60s, double transmissions. I said, yeah, you got more money than I do. And he said, I would stay there. Then he turns around and tells me, you know, I think I'll go to 40-inch tires. Anyway, but the side of Keith that really struck me was a week ago. He was a caring guy. And we were up at Red Cloud and doing Buddha Run and did some washes, and some of the boys, Keith included, Howard included, Les included, and Dave included, didn't want to follow our great leader, Dick. They decided to go and make a hole and go over these rocks and do all this stuff, and they made it. On the way out, I'm behind Dave. Dave lives over here across from Howard, and he's got the beard. I don't remember his last name. He broke his rear track bar. Now, in a Jeep, when you're behind it, which I was, his tires would go outside the fender on one side, inside on the other. And we had a long ways to go. And I said, hey, somebody needs to help. I don't know what to do. So Keith came up, and he trailed behind Dave, slower than slow, as we came out from back there, and Dave made it home safely. And that is the Keith I remember. Yep. He cared a lot.
Yep.
Well, I know Jim won't get up and speak, so I'll speak for him. He and Keith were real close buddies. Keith admired Jim a lot, but I think he knew Jim admired him too. But their motto can be said in a few words. When they got in their Jeeps, you drive it like you stole it.
Yeah.
My brother Dave, they were talking about the back car and everything. Anyhow, he got it fixed. But I've only been out in the trail twice with Keith. And I didn't know him very well. But anyhow, he did 55 on a lunch break. He helped me eat all my cookies.
Well, I remember Keith the first time I met him. We went to a swap meet. It was a yellow swap meet down here. And I had a friend with me, and this was like 201, 202, in that range. And my friend looked at me and he said, "You're looking to buy into this place, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, it's very, very nice place to be, and bring my dogs down here and walk them out the gate and the whole 9 yards." So he says, "Talk to Keith." And I said, "Okay, I'll talk to Keith." So I walked over to Keith and I introduced, "I'm Bill," and he said he was Keith. And I said, "You got a lot for sale, don't you?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I'm kind of looking for a lot, you know." I said, "Where is it and how much?" He kind of looked at me up and down, you know. "Well, I don't know yet. I haven't talked to Gene." And I said, "Well, I'd like to know kind of a price." He said, I said, "Give me a price." He said, "Well, 25,000, which to me was reasonable. The first thing I said out of my mouth is, "What's wrong with it?" And he sat down there and he said, "Well, go look at 1289 and take a look at that." So me and the wife went down and took a look at him. And my wife said, "I want it. This is it. This is my piece of land." I said, "Okay." So we went back and talked to Gene and Keith. I said, "Keith, you know you can get $30,000 to $35,000 for this lot?" He looked right square in the eye and he said, "I said 25 and it's going to be 25. I'll never forget it. Never forget it. Once he said something, it was law. Gene was mad at him for 2 years for selling the lot.
About 2 years ago, my wife Irene, she gave Beth and Tony and Jim and Elaine and
Higher.
and
Louder.
and Sharon ballroom dancing lessons. So they were all over our house, and he got through the first day and he told Gene, "Boy, that Irene's like little Hitler. Get out there and all you got to do it this way, Keith." So Irene heard about that. So the next time they were over, Irene walked up to him, looked him right in the eye, and said, "Hi, Hitler."
There's Irene. Wow.
Well,
I've known Keith for a while. I'm Bob Whitaker. First time I went, real cheeky, the first time I went was with Bob O'Brien in a little tractor. The way we told how fast we were going was to lift the floor mat and see how fast we were going. The first time I went was with Keith. He asked me if I'd like to go. I had told his wife about it. She says, "How do you spell that last name?" Anybody's got a name like Christ, you can go. Little did she know. I was telling, in fact, Mike the other day, I says, we were coming out, up the Concho.
Talk a little louder.
I can't. We're talking, coming back in from Picacho out where the Graper's out there. And he'd already, bucketed your butt a couple of times already. And I could see this road going up this damn mountain. Nobody else was going up there. I thought, if you don't say anything, he won't see it. Yeah, shit is right. He looked at once and he says, "What do you think?" Here we go. He said, "Look out your window on your side so we don't go on the edge." Away he goes. Just climbing, God, he's up there and all of a sudden I went, "Stop!" He did. And he just sat there and started laughing. "You are a wimp." "Wimp my butt." I says, "That's straight off." He says, "It is?" We had to back down then. That gentleman is forever in my mind and taught me a lot about doing Jeep. Thanks to you guys for letting us come and share it with you.
Oh, I remember Keith talking about him eating cookies. One night I was bored, so I started going on a walk, and it was very, very dark. I walked by here, and I glanced over there, and there was Keith. He had a bowl of something. Gene, you must not have fed him that night. I could see. He was just going just like this, and I thought, I wonder what he's got. Maybe I'll knock on the door and see what he's got. But he was enjoying that to no end. And I can see him today. Probably ice cream.
Yeah. I might as well again. When Bob was talking, I remember that Fred and Bob and I think there were a couple others with us. We went out jeeping, just a few of us sort of exploring. And I actually had the opportunity, one time only, of pulling Keith out of a place that he couldn't get back up. we went down this hill and it was pretty rough. In fact, Bob learned a little bit as he was going down sideways on this one thing. And anyway, Keith says, "Well, I think we can make it over here." He says, "I'll go on down here, and one of you guys can pull me out if I don't make it." So basically, that's what happened. But he was always fun to go with, and it was always an adventure. One other thing I'll never forget. Charlie would bring these peppers. Keith loved the peppers. And his eyes would be just streaming with tears, and he would say, "Oh, that's good, Charlie."
Did you get pictures of you towing him?
Yeah.
I got one that
No.
people probably don't realize that Keith was a survivor. I'm probably the only one that he almost drowned in that Jeep. Dick was taking us out and it rained, and we got into some real bad stuff. And in fact, when I got out of mine to hook the line onto Keith's Jeep to pull me out, I was over knee deep in water, and the line broke. And I hollered on the radio, "Keith, the line broke, the line broke." And he just kept going to high ground, and he finally admitted afterwards, he said, "It was everybody for themselves, survivors." He was a survivor.
You could float less.
Now we can get some real Keith stories.
Now we get the key.
The first thing I have to say about that story is knee deep to him's not very deep. Keith and I were really good friends. We spent many hours talking about our Jeeps, what the next step was, whether to buy a 60 front end, 38-inch tires,